Late winter in the grassy parts of the world, you will very often see tufts of green bursting up, way ahead of all the other turf around them. Little green explosions of early spring, and they taste like onions, though I think those are technically garlic. Doesn't matter. The point is, there are wild alliums all around me. Free onions, free garlic, all around us right now, and it's all edible. Assuming that it hasn't been drenched in some noxious yard care chemicals or something, it's all edible. And these wild plants in my grass are particularly useful this dreary time of the year, when all of my herbs are either still frostbitten or just barely starting to grow green again. I'll be inside cooking something, sweet potato home fries in this case, parboil, drain, then saute until crispy. It'd be nice to have a bright hit of green on that plate, so I walk outside, I tear off a tuft, and there, unlimited free chives. I mean, these ones are not technically chives, I don't think, though chives do grow wild as well. And regardless, the small or immature greenery of any wild allium can be used just like chives. These wild ones are a little tougher, a little more fibrous than chives from the grocery store, so I make a point to slice them extra thin. That takes care of it. Delicious, fresh, oniony, garlicky flavor, and super pretty too. One reason these wild alliums come up ahead of everything else this time of year is that a lot of them, or most of them, grow from bulbs, just like this amaryllis that's about to bloom again. Amaryllis is actually related to alliums, and you can see that it's about to bloom again. It's growing from a bulb. And also related to alliums are daffodils. Plants like these that grow from underground bulbs are harbingers of spring because the bulb is full of last year's sunshine. It's an energy store filled with carbs the plant can use to get a head start on the next growing season. Wait, you're telling me these little blades of onion grass have tiny little subterranean bulbs on them, like the bulb of an onion or garlic? Yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you. Most of them, though probably not as big. Find an older, more established specimen, grab it securely near the ground, and pull, slowly but firmly so nothing snaps. Check it, there's the bulb. Smaller than a modern domestic variety, but still totally edible and quite tasty. Actually, I think it's a bit stronger and more peppery than domestic onions and garlic. Maybe not great for eating raw, but those pungent sulfuric compounds at least tell me that I am actually eating some kind of edible allium, and not a deadly poisonous plant that just happens to look like an edible allium. Wild alliums can look almost identical to a number of plant species known commonly as death camas, and they are as bad as they sound. Here's one of the few case reports I was able to find where somebody got sick eating what they mistook for a wild allium. 50-year-old Navajo guy in northeast Arizona went for a walk in the woods with his daughters and dug up what he thought was a wild onion. Turns out it was Zygodanus paniculatus, a member of the lily family known as foothill death camas. It's filled with toxic alkaloids, and as such, it tastes extremely bitter. The daughters both tasted it and then spit it out because it was extremely bitter, because evolution works. We generally don't like the taste of things that are acutely toxic to us, but the dad swallowed half of it before he realized that it was not an onion, and he got real sick within hours, like violent vomiting. Ataxia, which is loss of muscle control. Paresthesias, which is pins and needles running up and down his arms. He literally stumbled into the emergency room with scary low blood pressure. They gave him IV fluids and had him swallow activated charcoal, and luckily he was able to go home the next day. His family found the plant and sent it to the University of Arizona at Tucson, and yeah, it was foothill death camas, which poisons grazing animals all the time if they're poorly fed and desperate enough to eat something super bitter. That Arizona dad got off relatively easy. So the lesson here is smell the plant before you eat it. Tear it open, unleash those enzymatic processes that make those pungent sulfur compounds that we know and love from onions and garlic. Smell it. Only onions and garlic smell like onions and garlic. Nothing else does. The death camas smells and tastes nothing like this. Another lesson here, especially if you're a dad or a mom, is maybe buy some life insurance, which you can do with the sponsor of this video, Policy Genius. My wife and kids would be in serious financial trouble if I got hit by a bus or ate a poison plant right now. My labor pays the bills around here, and I have dragged my feet getting life insurance because the process can be really complicated and daunting. Not so at policygenius.com/Adam Ragusa. I just put in some basic info and tell them what I want. I just want term life insurance, which is the cheapest. I just want to make sure that if I bite it in the next 20 years, my kids will have enough cash to get them grown up and through school. In minutes, you can compare personalized quotes from top companies to find the lowest price and coverage you need. You could save 50% or more on life insurance by comparing quotes with Policy Genius. They have licensed experts who work for me, not the insurance companies. And when I'm ready to apply, they handle all the paperwork and the scheduling for free. Hit my link in the description, policygenius.com/Adam Ragusa. Get your free life insurance quotes to find out how much you could save. Thank you, Policy Genius. Anyway, yeah, make sure you smell it before you eat it. Make sure that it smells like onions or garlic. Is this onions or garlic? Well, when the plants are this small, I don't think that distinction is particularly meaningful or important. It's hard to conclusively ID them until they grow big enough to flower, but these, I believe, are Allium vanille, which is known as wild garlic, or onion grass, or field garlic, crow garlic. It tastes kind of garlicky, but you're not going to be peeling any individual cloves with papery skins, so whether it's onions or garlic, I don't think really matters. Allium vanille grows natively all across Afro-Eurasia, but here in the Americas, it's actually invasive. Also in Australia too, apparently. It doesn't really cause much of a problem in yards other than making you smell like onions when you mow the lawn. But ranchers hate the stuff. If cattle graze on too much field garlic, those flavors show up in the milk and the meat, which could be kind of awesome, but I understand why some consumers might be put off. Also, if livestock eat a ton of field garlic, they can get a little sick. Remember, those pungent sulfur compounds in alliums are a chemical weapon designed to repel animals, mostly insects. But Allium vanille apparently has a high level of sulfides that can be a digestive irritant in farm animals, and for that same reason, experts advise against humans eating wild garlic in enormous quantities, which you probably wouldn't do anyway. There are, of course, many other wild allium species that are commonly foraged. Here are some of them. And I think I have some of them growing in my lawn as well, particularly I think Allium canadense, or however you say that. It's this one over here. Unlike the tubular greens of the wild garlic, this has flatter, like U-shaped leaves, but they still smell and taste like onion. Allium canadense means Canada onion, but it's also called Canadian garlic, or meadow garlic, because the distinction between onion and garlic doesn't really matter with plants this little. And like I said, the wild alliums are most useful to me as a kind of emergency last-minute fresh herb. Like a couple of years ago, I was shooting this mushroom risotto recipe, and I realized that I had not gotten any kind of fresh herb to garnish it with, which is really, really important for the thumbnail. So I just walked outside to the front yard, snipped off some of whatever species that particular tuft is, and boom! Or bam, as a great man used to say when applying finishing herbs. Here in the American South, this supply of free, fresh herbs in the yard runs from, gosh, the second half of winter all the way until it gets really hot in the summer and the plants kind of die back, but then in the fall they spring back up out of the bulbs again. They grow in recognizable clumps because the bulbs underground spin off other bulbs, which spin off into other bulbs, etc., etc. If you see just one or two little fine green hairs sticking up, those plants might have just recently taken root from the seeds that blew off of the flowers and into the wind from a plant that did not get mowed before it could flower. But if you find a clump that looks pretty big and beefy like that one, that's well established, meaning it's been there probably for many seasons. So the ground is full of big, delicious bulbs storing energy as sugar and starch. You can rip the whole clump up and fish out the individual bulbs. I want to stress again that even if the plant itself is non-toxic, it could be contaminated with toxic chemicals in the groundwater and such. So you probably want to forage in ground that you know and trust. Here's a really nice way to cook any small, pretty vegetables, not just yard garlic. Leave them whole, or maybe cut them in half to preserve their shape. Throw them in just enough water to boil/steam them. I might add a little more water as I go, but my goal is to have most of that water evaporated by the time the veggies are just fork tender. Then you turn off the heat, nothing should be bubbling anymore, and it's safe to melt in some butter. The butter will form an emulsion with the remaining water, which has concentrated onion garlic flavor in it. And you just get this beautiful silky glaze on them. Chop up some of the greens to use for garnish, and yeah, those are some Michelin star caliber yard onions right there. They taste delicious, though a little bit bitter compared to domestic alliums. Bitterness is one of the first traits that people breed out of vegetables when they start farming them, but it's not bothering me here at all. It's a nice, fresh counterpoint to the sweetness of last year's sunshine stored in those little bulbs. Go find you some free food in the yard, or the front garden. Brits would call it a garden.